Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our briefing today about the silent epidemic of stillbirth in the United States. Stillbirth is the death of a baby in utero before or during delivery at 20 or more weeks gestation. This briefing comes at a perfect time as the House is considering a critical bill, the Shine for Autumn Act, that will address stillbirth today. We will hear more about that bill in a bit. I would like to first introduce myself. I'm Marjorie Vale. I am currently the Director of Awareness at Push for Empowered Pregnancy. My son, Alexei, was born still in 2004, and I represent American parents who have lost their babies to stillbirth. I'm now a passionate advocate for stillbirth prevention and funding in this country, so no other family has to join our club. I'm also the former Mrs. New York American 2020. I'm pleased to be the moderator of today's congressional briefing because this hour is dedicated to stillbirth. Let's first define what stillbirth means. I encourage you to leave your questions in the Q&A function located at the bottom of your Zoom throughout our time together. We will answer your questions throughout the presentation, and also with a live Q&A with our panelists at the end. We are pleased to hear today from two champions of stillbirth action in the House of Representatives and original sponsors of the Shine for Autumn Act. First, Congresswoman Jaime Herrera Beutler, who was first elected to Congress at the age of 31 to represent Southwest Washington's 3rd District. She is the first Hispanic in history to represent Washington State on the federal level. Congresswoman Herrera Beutler is the co-founder of the Bipartisan Maternity Care Caucus and has been a champion for maternal and child health. Most notably, she has successfully spearheaded legislation that was signed into law to address maternal mortality, the largest step Congress has taken to prevent moms from dying during pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum. She is an original sponsor of the Shine for Autumn Act and a champion for preventing stillbirth in the United States.
Hi there, this is Congresswoman Jaime Herrera Beutler. Thank you so much for joining this briefing on the issue of stillbirth in America, hosted by Healthy Birth Day and the 2 Degrees Foundation. According to the CDC, 1 out of every 169 pregnancies ends in stillbirth here in the United States, which is over 23,000 stillbirths a year. And stillbirth certainly doesn't discriminate. It affects all families, races, ethnicities, and income levels. And perhaps what makes this even more shocking, given these disturbing trends, is how little has been done to address the issue. The fact is, no parent should have to go through the devastation of a stillbirth. To the thousands of parents who've lost a child to stillbirth, we see you. As co-chair of the Bipartisan Maternity Care Caucus in Congress, along with my colleague, Congresswoman Lucille RoybalAllard, we want to make a change. We come from different political parties and we share a common goal, however, of achieving more positive outcomes for moms and babies across this country. We've recently introduced legislation in Congress, the Stillbirth Health Improvement and Education, or SHINE for Autumn Act, that takes meaningful steps to prevent and reduce incidences of stillbirth across our country. The bill would provide critical resources to state and federal health departments. It'll improve data collection and increase education and awareness around the issue of stillbirth. I'm proud we've gotten this bill off the ground. Now I look forward to guiding it through Congress so it can be signed into law. Thank you again for your interest in attending this briefing. I hope it provides much needed insights into how we can work together to end this crisis that's affecting our nation's families. Thank you and take care.
Next, we will hear from Congresswoman Lucille RoybalAllard, who is the first Mexican-American woman elected to Congress. The Congresswoman is the first Latina to serve as one of the 12 cardinals or chairs of a House Appropriations Subcommittee, as well as the first Latina to serve on a House Appropriations Committee. She has been at the forefront of the fight to improve the quality and affordability of health services and has successfully secured funding for local needs, including infant and child care and prenatal health. With Congresswoman Herrera-Beutler, she is co-founder of the Bipartisan Maternity Care Caucus and is an original sponsor for the Shine for Autumn Act.
Hello, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Lucille RoybalAllard, and I am delighted to welcome you to this virtual briefing on the silent epidemic of stillbirth. For far too long, stillbirth has existed in the shadows of our maternity care system. As co-chair of the Congressional Maternity Care Caucus, I am so pleased this issue is finally getting the recognition it deserves. This is largely due to the passion and commitment of the organizations sponsoring today's briefing, including the 2 Degrees Foundation, Healthy Birthday Inc., and Count the Kicks. I particularly want to thank Debbie Hayden for sharing with us her family story of losing Autumn, and for her decade-long crusade to shine a federal spotlight on this heartbreaking maternal health concern. It was because of her advocacy I came to understand that each year about 24,000 babies are stillborn in the United States. This is more than 10 times as many deaths that occur from sudden infant death syndrome. And our minority communities are disproportionately impacted by this heartbreak. I also learned the United States lags behind most other wealthy nations in reducing its stillbirth rates, and we do not adequately support women and families who experience this tragedy. That is why I am so proud to have worked with my colleagues, Congresswoman Jamie Herrera-Beutler, Kathy Castor, and Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen on the Shine for Autumn Act introduced this fall. Our bill will provide critical resources to state and federal health departments to improve surveillance and data collection on stillbirth. And it will establish a perinatal pathology fellowship program at the National Institutes of Health to increase research on stillbirth. The Shine for Autumn Act will help bring stillbirth out of the shadows by supporting the development of stillbirth guidelines and by improving educational materials, which will increase awareness and understanding of this perinatal tragedy. I am so excited that this November, our SHINE Act was passed out of the full Energy and Commerce Committee, and we hope your bosses can support this bill when it comes to the floor for a vote this week. The Maternity Care Caucus is committed to highlighting the many shortcomings in our maternity care system and to working with all of you to ensure the best possible maternity outcomes for every mother, infant, and family in our country. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this virtual briefing and to learn more about how we can reduce the occurrence of stillbirth in our nation.
Next, we will hear from Adam Goldberg, familiar to many of you. Adam is a fantastic actor and filmmaker. What you may not know is that he is also a passionate advocate for addressing stillbirth prevention. I'm thrilled that he is here with us today. Adam?
Hi, thank you so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to tell you a bit about our story. On the morning of March 21st, 2013, 1 week past his due date and a long, mournful night after his heart inexplicably stopped beating, my first son was born lifeless. His name was Bix. It wasn't a name that was given to him posthumously. It was his name for much of my wife's pregnancy, actually. I remember the moment we settled on it vividly. We were driving, listening to the jazz legend Bix Beiderbecke, but I have been unable to listen to his music since. In the years that followed, my wife and I have had two beautiful, healthy boys, now 7 and 3, The 3-year-old might make an unexpected audio appearance. I don't know. But suffice it to say, the day that we lost Bix and the mourning period that followed was as dark a chapter as either one of us had ever known. There is really no way to impart the shock and devastation one feels after a stillbirth. The haunting, penetrating sorrow of holding in your arms a baby who was otherwise perfect and whole, who had been kicking you beneath your wife's skin for months, for whom you played music, had parties, made plans, made a room. It felt as if a frigid wind had swept through our home and taken Bix and any concept of what our future might hold with him. We felt as if we were in a wilderness, aimlessly and frantically trying to find something to hold on to, something to tether us. There is such stigma around stillbirth, which is 10 times more common than SIDS, but about which there is so much less known and discussed. And we felt ostracized, in a sense, with our pain. Of course, there were a couple of local groups we discovered online, and we went once. I saw a grief therapist for a few sessions, and we read anything we could get our hands on about grief writ large, because there were so few resources regarding our specific, yet sadly and strangely so common variety of it. And it was a mystery. It remains a mystery. To this day, we don't know why he died. Yes, there was an early potential marker. And so we saw a fantastic specialist through the first 2 trimesters, but because ultimately he registered as healthy, good size, good weight, we were told to have a great 3rd trimester and we'd see him on the next one. We ultimately had an autopsy performed and an expensive genomic test was run. And while a chromosomal aberration did turn up, there was no way to know whether that was a contributing factor or merely a coincidence. It was really just speculation. We did this not only to have some closure, but so we'd know for the future, right? Should we have more kids? Was this going to happen again? Was it one of us? There was really nothing to indicate it would or it was, but of course, one never knows. Or at least given the current state of stillbirth research, we know much less than we should about the 23,000 babies we lose each year to this silent epidemic. My wife's subsequent 2 pregnancies, which gave us our 2 living boys, went smoothly by any medical metric, but psychologically they were tantamount to holding one's breath for 9 months twice. Now, obviously, much of life is an unknown quantity, and I am not here to ask the impossible, to pass a bill that will provide every parent with the ironclad assurance that they will have a happy, healthy pregnancy and baby. But for too long, stillbirth has remained in the shadows. The grief is bad enough, but the shame and the isolation are particularly cruel components. I'm here to ask you to help pass the Shine for Autumn Act to bring stillbirth out of the shadows, help bring these unacceptable numbers down, and put living babies into the arms of the parents who love them. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you so much, Adam. Another important voice in our collective work to prevent stillbirth is that of Debbie Hayden, Vijay. Debbie is a powerful stillbirth parent advocate. Debbie worked to introduce and has strong bipartisan support for legislation in her daughter's name, the Shine for Autumn Act. Through her advocacy, Debbie is working to ensure Autumn's death and the thousands of babies lost to stillbirth every year are no longer hidden in the shadows. She is grateful for the House's efforts to address the U.S. stillbirth crisis and looks forward to seeing the Shine for Autumn Act become law. Debbie?
Thank you, Marjorie. I'm so grateful to be here today and extend my heartfelt thanks to Congresswoman Herrera-Butler and Congresswoman Roybal-Allard and all the co-sponsors of HR 5487, the Stillbirth Health Improvement and Education for Autumn Act. Your leadership is, for the first time, shining a spotlight on our country's stillbirth crisis. Becoming a stillbirth advocate was not part of my master plan, but on July 7th, 2011, my life irrevocably changed while at a routine checkup when my OB could not detect my daughter Autumn's heartbeat. My world came crashing down around me as I was suddenly thrust into any expectant mother's worst nightmare. Time stopped moving for me that day, and my life has never been the same since. Nothing can ever prepare you to give birth to your lifeless baby. The experience fundamentally changed me in ways that I will never be able to explain. The moment that I brought Autumn into the world sleeping, the woman I was supposed to be, the mom I was going to be, was lost forever. The months following Autumn's death were excruciating. I was drowning in grief. The only thing saving me was my anger. It kept me afloat as it consumed me. I was mad that my baby had died. I was mad that I couldn't save her. And I was so unbelievably mad that I never knew that anything like this could happen to me. My doctors had led me to believe that my losing Autumn was as rare as being struck by lightning, but I soon learned that this wasn't the case and that stillbirths are one of the most common adverse pregnancy outcomes. At the time, there were approximately 25,000 stillbirths every year in the US. And although those numbers of stillbirth have minimally declined since then, so have the number of live births. We are doing no better today than when I lost Autumn 10 years ago. In fact, the annual number of stillbirths far exceeds the number of deaths among children aged 0 to 14 years from preterm birth, SIDS, accidents, drownings, guns, fire, and flu combined. There are longstanding and persistent racial and ethnic disparities, with Black pregnant individuals experiencing stillbirth at 2 times the rate of their white counterparts. And yet, even with numbers like these, stillbirth remains one of the most understudied and underfunded public health issues today. The concerning reality is the number of stillbirths in this country have remained frustratingly the same for over 10 years. We've seen marked improvements in the rate of infant mortality, and now we need to see the improvements in stillbirth. We simply cannot continue to ignore this issue. Researchers are only now beginning to understand the impact COVID-19 has had on adverse pregnancy outcomes, but recent studies do show that COVID-19 is tied to a higher risk of stillbirth. And so now more than ever, we owe it to the families of this nation to work harder to protect them. It's important for Congress to recognize that as dire as this picture looks, we can do something about stillbirth right now. With increased awareness and education for pregnant individuals and their families, better data collection, and dedicated resources, we can achieve the goals that stillbirth advocates like myself and dedicated health providers and researchers have been working towards for far too long. The first thing Congress can and must do is pass and fund H.R. 5487, the Shine for Autumn Act. What this bill will do is authorize research and improve data collection, building for the first time a true federal-state partnership to reduce the overall incidence of stillbirth in the United States. It will provide new education tools to support health providers and their patients through the CDC, NIH, and state health departments. Watching the Shine for Autumn Act receive such overwhelming bipartisan support in the House this year has lifted me up. I was brought to tears as the bill passed the Energy and Commerce Committee in November, and I'm eagerly awaiting the bill's consideration on the House floor later today. And I look forward to working with the Senate to pass the bill onto the White House for a signature into law. My daughter Autumn and all the babies born still deserve this bill. Their families deserve this bill. And other families at risk today deserve this bill. I call on Congress to see this through. Watching the Shine for Autumn Act become law will help me believe that Autumn's life was not lost in vain. It is not acceptable that we are losing tens of thousands of babies every year to stillbirth. We have a collective responsibility to understand why stillbirths happen and to combat this maternal and family health crisis. Please continue to work with me to ensure this issue is no longer ignored or forgotten. We can and must do better. The time is now to shine a light on stillbirth.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for sharing. I am now proud to introduce to you Dr. Lauren Christensen, linguist, an assistant professor in the Department of Epidemiology at Emory University's Rollins School of Public Health in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Christensen, linguist, is a maternal and child health epidemiologist with particular expertise in stillbirth in the United States. She has worked to identify areas for improving stillbirth reporting and was the PI for a study aimed at expanding an existing surveillance system to allow for surveillance of stillbirth in US. Dr. Lauren, linguist.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. I'm so grateful and honored for the opportunity to highlight some of the public health challenges that impact our ability to address stillbirth in the United States and how the Shine for Autumn Act will help us fill some of these gaps. However, before zooming out to discuss population level data, I would like to reiterate what you have already heard, which is that stillbirth is far more than a difficult life event that occurs at a single moment in time. Stillbirths are devastating with impacts that are wide-reaching and lifelong. And as we consider the 21,478 stillbirths that were reported in the US in 2019, we must not forget that every one of those numbers represents a life lost and a family that has been forever changed. To put this in perspective, this is the equivalent of losing nearly 3 classrooms of kindergartners every day for an entire year. Although work remains, the US has made great improvements in infant mortality or deaths occurring before a baby's first birthday, with a 16% reduction from 2007 to 2018. This is attributable to efforts such as reductions in preterm birth, folic acid supplementation, and advancements in the care of babies with congenital heart defects. Back to sleep campaigns had a tremendous impact on deaths due to SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome, with an impressive 38.6% reduction during this timeframe. While these are remarkable achievements, they highlight just how little progress can be made in has been made in reducing stillbirth rates in the US, with only a 3.8% reduction during this same period. Data from other high-income countries show that stillbirth rates are not immutable and that progress is possible. In a study of 49 high-income countries, the US fell right in the middle with the 25th highest stillbirth rate. Even worse, we ranked 48th out of 49 in our progress in reducing stillbirth rates from 2005 to 2015. A different study of 195 countries found only 13 that performed worse than the US in reducing their stillbirth rates from 2000 to 2019. Australia, Ireland, and the UK have made stillbirth prevention and care national priorities. Some of their efforts include the implementation of national guidelines for providing holistic care following a stillbirth, improvements in stillbirth data collection and reporting, and prioritizing activities to reduce stillbirth rates. The SHINE Act will provide the necessary framework and authorize funding to allow the US to follow suit. There are 2 dangerous misconceptions that contribute to stillbirth's lack of public health attention and action in the US. The first of these is that stillbirths are exceedingly rare. Countless bereaved parents had no idea that a stillbirth was a possible pregnancy outcome until it happened to them. Even worse, they are stunned to find a far too large community of families who have walked the same path. With so little public awareness, those whose families or friends experience a stillbirth are often woefully unprepared for how to best support them. This leaves bereaved families feeling misunderstood and isolated. The second misconception is that when a stillbirth occurs, it was inevitable, that there was some genetic abnormality that couldn't have been prevented. In reality, only 10% of stillbirths are attributable to genetic causes. At least 25% of US stillbirths are preventable. That's equivalent to saving 5,369 babies in 2019 alone. And as we make comparisons to other high-income countries, we estimate that as many as 75% of US stillbirths could be prevented. The SHINE Act addresses these misconceptions by requiring the creation and dissemination of educational materials to bring stillbirth out of the shadows. Most importantly, these materials will provide vital information for pregnant people on stillbirth risk factors and prevention. Additionally, by raising our collective consciousness, we will have greater awareness of this tragic pregnancy outcome and will be better prepared to support someone when a loss occurs. Another major barrier in the US is poor quality stillbirth data, which come from vital statistics. Just as live births are reported via birth certificates, every stillbirth should have a corresponding fetal death certificate. Unfortunately, these data are often missing or inaccurate. Substantial efforts have gone into improving the reporting of data for live births, and although there is some overlap that could also improve stillbirth reporting, the same rigor has not been applied. A particular shortcoming is that of timeliness. Live births have been prioritized for timely reporting, such that provisional data for the previous year can be made available within 5 months. Stillbirth data take much longer, and data briefs are even further delayed. As an example, while a final report for live births is available for 2019, the most recent stillbirth data brief is from 2016, and this report lacks much of the vital information that had been included in these briefs up until 2013. The SHINE Act authorizes vital financial support to improve the collection, reporting, and timeliness of stillbirth data in the US. We cannot make progress in reducing stillbirth rates if we do not have both timely and accurate reporting of these losses. It is critical for families to learn why a stillbirth has occurred, yet this information is not always available. In addition to playing an important role in the grieving process, insight into the causes of stillbirth can be used to address the immediate health of the birthing parent and provide guidance for managing any subsequent pregnancies. The two most important stillbirth evaluations are an examination of the placenta and a fetal autopsy. While placentas are routinely evaluated after a stillbirth, fetal autopsies are much less common. Perinatal pathologists are in short supply in the US, which is problematic since other pathologists do not have the training required to conduct these evaluations. Lack of access to a perinatal pathologist results either in no autopsy at all or one that yields incorrect findings. The SHINE Act establishes a much needed perinatal pathology fellowship program, which will improve access to fetal autopsies. Not only will this help bereaved families, but data from these autopsies will improve our understanding of the causes of stillbirth in the US and will shine light on areas for targeted prevention. Stillbirth was a public health crisis in the US long before the pandemic. However, I would be remiss to not discuss the impact that COVID-19 has had on stillbirth in the US. A recent CDC report found that pregnant people who had a COVID-19 infection at delivery had a 90% increase in their risk of stillbirth compared to those delivering without a COVID-19 infection. Although national live birth data are already available for 2020, stillbirth data are not. This prevents us from quantifying the pandemic's effects on stillbirth nationwide. However, our team at Emory recently reviewed the websites of all reporting areas in the US and identified complete data for 7 states to compare stillbirth rates in 2019 and 2020. These preliminary findings suggest that stillbirth rates did indeed increase during the pandemic, with some states being more severely impacted than others. In closing, stillbirth is a public health crisis in the US that we simply cannot afford to continue to ignore. The Shine for Autumn Act targets many of our shortcomings in reducing stillbirth rates and will put us on the path to saving more babies' lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christensen, linguist. I just want to remind everyone, should you have a question for the panelists, please use the Q&A function in the Zoom, and you will be looking through the questions to answer them at the end. Okay, so we'll move forward. I would like to introduce to you Neka Hall. Neka is a mother of 4 from Massachusetts and a powerful maternal health advocate and full spectrum doula. In 2014, she founded the organization Quietly United and Lost Together, or QUILT, after the tragic loss of her daughter, Anaya. Neka?
Good afternoon. I'm the mother of 4. Oops, jumped up. A 21-year-old son, a 16-year-old daughter, and an angel baby who would now be 11, and a sweet little girl who is 7. As a mother, I've learned that the health of my children at birth was not solely determined by my care, but by many social determinants as well. I would like to take a few moments to tell you about my beautiful butterfly baby who passed, Anaya Marie. A day before my 37th birthday, on August 26, 2010, I went to my 39-week checkup. My older children, then ages 5 and 10, were excited to go with me so they could play doctor with the Doppler. The OB had encountered an emergency and was running a bit behind. We sat in the waiting room for what seemed like an eternity, but were finally taken into an exam room. Since the doctor was running behind, she decided to have her PA take my children back out to the waiting room, assuring them that they would have a chance to play doctor with the Doppler after she checked to see how far I was dilated. She took out her Doppler, and mine was the only heartbeat she was able to hear. After receiving confirmation of my daughter's death via ultrasound, my OB looked at me and said, "These things happen." Sadly, my children did not have the opportunity to hear their sister's heartbeat as she died while we were waiting to be seen that day. Anaya Marie was born early the next morning. She was perfect in every way, but the obvious one. She simply looked like a sleeping baby. I even found myself shaking her a little bit to see if by chance some mistake had been made and her tightly shut eyes would open to reveal life. No mistakes had been made. She was gone, and I was left with decisions no parent ever wants to make. Initially, the thought of allowing my daughter to be autopsied was the farthest thing from my mind. But when my doctor's nurse came to visit me for a chat later that afternoon, she told me that it could possibly tell me what went wrong. The guilt had already set in, and I needed more information. So I signed the paperwork approving an autopsy and kissed my daughter goodbye. The next 2 years were a nightmare. I knew from her death certificate that her cause of death was asphyxia, but I could not understand how or why that could happen. I requested a copy of my full medical record and Anaya's full autopsy report and was given the runaround. I ended up hiring an attorney who was able to, through legal measures, convince the hospital to release the autopsy and medical records 11 months later, a month before Anaya would have turned 2. A disproportionate number of babies are born still to African Americans, Hispanics, and Native women. According to the CDC, a Black woman is more than twice likely to lose her baby to stillbirth than her white neighbor, colleague, or friend. Nearly 7,000 African American babies are lost to stillbirth each year in our country. And the statistics, as you can see on this slide, are staggering for Indigenous, Hispanic, and Asian Pacific women too. In this country, families across all races are 10 times more likely to lose a baby to stillbirth than they are to SIDS. Why is America so far behind? The SHINE Act will provide funding for crucial research and education to possibly prevent these losses and provide support to families and hope for people like me who wonder who their lost child would have been. I call on Congress to pass the SHINE Act and to prevent stillbirth and to save babies with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Nneka. There are solutions right now that are helping to prevent stillbirth in America. Organizations like Healthy Birthday, Inc. that created the evidence-based Count the Kicks public health campaign that has helped save babies in 26 states. Cleveland, Ohio, Count the Kicks ambassador, Jasmine Abraham, shares how they're saving babies from preventable stillbirth. Jasmine.
Hi, it's wonderful to be with you guys today. Count the Kicks is a positive and empowering campaign that is so effective when it began in Iowa in 2008 that it reduced this stillbirth rate by 32% in over a decade. In the first 5 years of the campaign, there was a stillbirth rate reduction among Black women of 39%, which is incredibly promising. I learned about this program, unfortunately, too late. Our first son, Clausen, was born still at 37 weeks in June of 2020. Our pregnancy, we were completely normal as it gets. And halfway through my pregnancy, everything with coronavirus came around, and half of my prenatal appointments became virtual. And because of that, I wasn't given all of the information that I needed. And I was told that my health network only provides kit counting information to high risk pregnancies. And since I was completely normal, I wasn't going to get that information. And so on the Saturday that I found out, you know, I was telling my husband, I really haven't felt him move all day. He was a ninja. He moved so much every single day. It hurt. I was ready to be done. I was 3 weeks away from my due date. And that day I hadn't felt anything. And I called my OB. They said, go to triage, make sure everything's okay, just for peace of mind. And I went there, and the resident looked at me once they got the ultrasound, and he said, I'm so sorry. There is no heartbeat. It's nothing you did. And as a first-time mom, I am sitting here mortified that I now have to get induced into labor. And going through that entire process, it's long, it's drawn out. Your body's not ready for this yet. All to be able to see what you've been waiting to see for 9 months, and to hear nothing, to hear complete and utter silence, is one of the most heartbreaking things you could ever imagine. If you remember the birth of your first child and how joyous that moment was, now imagine that being robbed. And that day, a piece of me died with him and was buried with him. And no one ever told me to pay attention to his movements. I was like, well, you know, he moves so much. And every day in the third trimester, it's a red flag if your baby's movement changes. That's the first indication that something is wrong. And so this evidence-based Count the Kicks campaign educates and empowers expectant parents to monitor their baby's movements every single day in the third trimester and speak up if they notice a change. If I had practiced kit counting, then maybe I would have realized that maybe I would have been able to save him. I would have realized sooner, instead of at the end of the day, that I hadn't felt him move that day. Research shows that more than half of all stillbirths, moms do notice a significant change in their movements just before their baby dies. But the fetal infant mortality review programs across the country tell too many moms that they were just like me, and that they didn't know that this was an important warning sign. When moms are educated and empowered to speak up about a change in movement, then doctors have a chance to investigate and intervene. Taking that time to do one NST, to do one BPP ultrasound to make sure that your baby is okay is nothing compared to being able to save the life of your child. The solution is so simple and so easy to understand and so effortless. It sparked a systemic change in Iowa, which is incredible, and it expanded to 13 additional states, including Ohio, in partnerships with various funders and state organization health departments to help manage the care in these organizations. And the bright yellow posters and brochures are everywhere. And it's made to spark a conversation with their provider to talk about kit counting and the importance. Count the Kicks they created a free app that's available in 12 different languages, which is incredible. So it's not out of reach for anybody. And it acts as a data download to support mom's intuition. I used the app in my second pregnancy with my daughter, Aya, and I am a proud new mom to her. And being able to see what can come from a pregnancy, a positive outcome, after exactly what Adam said, holding your breath for 9 months. It's excruciating. It's a matter of if this baby will come, not when. And Count the Kicks is just an evidence-based solution that helps put mothers at ease. And something so simple can help many stillbirths be prevented. And if Congress votes to pass this SHINE Act and provide the needed resources so that states can support highly effective programs like this one, just look at some of these faces. Count the Kicks has collected nearly 100 safe stories, 100 families that have not had to join the club that we unwillingly had to join. And for moms across the country who can use this program to save their babies' lives. Parents deserve this information and deserve to watch their babies grow like I'm getting the chance to now. The SHINE Act can help bring stillbirth prevention efforts to all 50 states. Thank you so much for allowing me to bring this information to you. Marjorie?
Thank you, Jasmine. Before we move on to our next speaker, I just want to thank Adam, Debbie, Neka, and Jasmine for valiantly sharing their stories. We know it's not easy, but thank you so much. Our next speaker, our final speaker, is Dr. Tom Westover, Chief of Maternal Fetal Medicine at Capital Health in Trenton, New Jersey, Associate Professor, MFM, and OBGYN Nat Cooper Medical School, Rowan University in Camden, New Jersey. Dr. Westover.
Thank you. It's my honor to serve on this panel with all of the wonderful people who are advocating for family health across our country and across the world. Many years ago, the founder of the Global Safe Motherhood Initiative and the president of the International Federation of OBGYN, Dr. Mahmoud Fatala, was speaking about the worldwide crisis of maternal mortality that existed at that time. And he famously stated, "Women are not dying during childbirth because of diseases we cannot treat. They're dying because societies have yet to make the decision that their lives are worth saving." I think we're in a similar situation at this point in time regarding stillbirth. That provocative quote galvanized a massive worldwide response that led to a significant and sustained global reduction in maternal mortality from almost 600,000 deaths per year to less than 300,000 deaths per year across the globe. We like to say during those subsequent years of effort that coordinated and focused international effort occurred in three phases. Firstly, a phase of awareness. Secondly, a phase of vision and planning. And lastly, a phase of commitment and implementation. Unfortunately, we are still early in our journey to achieve that same success in reducing stillbirths in the US and globally. In 2011, the renowned medical journal, The Lancet, published a seminal series of articles entitled "Stillbirths, A Call to Action." They noted that worldwide, millions of families experience stillbirth, yet these deaths remain uncounted, unsupported, and the solutions understudied. They further stated that better documentation of stillbirths and better counting, alongside maternal and neonatal death analysis, as well as strategic programmatic action, would make stillbirths count in the future. Yet, in 2015, the WHO noted that stillbirth reduction was absent from the 2000 Millennial Development Goals and absent from the 2010 Sustainable Development Goals, and that stillbirths remained a neglected issue, invisible in policy, invisible in programs, underfinanced, and in urgent need of attention. So where are we now? Sadly, worldwide, every hour, approximately 300 babies are stillborn, which accounts for almost 7,000 stillbirths per day and 2.6 million stillbirths per year globally. What did the Lancet authors and leadership ask in 2011 during their call to action? They asked for several things. They asked for regions or countries with a high stillbirth rate, that the goal by 2020, our current timeframe, should be to reduce stillbirth rates by at least 50% from the then current rates. Have we done that? Sadly, we have not. For regions or countries with a low stillbirth rate, they asked that the goal by 2020 was to eliminate all preventable stillbirths and close equity gaps. Have we done that? Again, sadly, we have not. So what can we do? The Lancet authors, the WHO, and the global obstetric community and advocacy community have thoughtfully created several priority actions for us to consider. They challenged the public health community to do several things. Include stillbirth reduction in all relevant maternal and neonatal health initiatives and vital statistics. Include stillbirth analytics in all relevant international health reports. Collect and disseminate accurate stillbirth rates and data on causation of death. Create a universal classification system for stillbirth causation or etiologies. There are more than 30 different nomenclature and classification systems across the globe. agree on and implement an effective economic business model to reduce stillbirths from a worker productivity rate, create models for public and private funding to reduce stillbirths. They challenged individual countries and nations to do several things: create a plan for stillbirth reduction linked to maternal and newborn care, and set specific and time-bound goals, as we've already heard today. Collect and report accurate data on stillbirth rates and causes of death. We've already heard a little bit about the issues that go into the differences between live birth certificates and stillbirth birth certificates. Address the inequities and disparities in stillbirth rates by ethnicity and location and socioeconomic status. Audit stillbirths for causation and preventability and act on findings, and reduce stigma associated with stillbirth. Finally, they challenge communities and families to ensure empowerment of women to formulate plans to reduce stillbirths, to set up community groups to improve family health, to facilitate birth plans and communication between women, families, and their clinicians, to reduce the stigma associated with stillbirth and provide support for families that have been affected by this personal tragedy. This legislation is an important national step to achieving these goals. I thank the sponsors for creating this important legislation and urge all members of Congress, as well as the President and his administration, to support and vote in favor of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Westover. And thank you so much to our panelists today. We want to just take a moment to thank our sponsors for today's event. I'm going to read them off. We want to say thank you to Count the Kicks, 2 Degrees, ACOG, SMFM, March of Dimes, Association of Maternal and Child Health Programs, Quilt, Preeclampsia Foundation, Health Birth Today, Push for Empowered Pregnancy. Thank you so much for making today possible. We'd be happy to open the floor up for any questions that you may have, but I will begin with some questions for our panelists. And if our panelists are ready, I will start with Debbie. Debbie, your question is, how exactly will the Shine for Autumn Act help address stillbirth?
Okay. The bill will make critical steps to invest in more robust stillbirth research and improved data collection so that we can begin to better understand the underlying causes of stillbirth and identify strategies for prevention and reduction of incidences. Because with better data, we will have better outcomes. It also authorizes much needed resources that are not available today to states to increase stillbirth education, awareness, and enhance data collection.
Very important. And thank you so much for your answer. Our next question is for Dr. Westover, if you're still with us.
I am.
There you are. Dr. Westover, what health conditions can lead to stillbirth?
There's a number of different health conditions that can lead to stillbirth. Diabetes, there are medical complications related to the fragility or resiliency of the maternal health, diabetes, lupus, hypertension, et cetera. There are pure obstetrical conditions, issues with placental development, how well the placenta is able to provide perfusion and nutrition to the baby. Stillbirth is not a uniform condition. There are a number of different reasons why it happens. And so one solution is not going to resolve all of the different reasons why stillbirths occur.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I know that it's very helpful for everyone here that is listening. Our next question is to Dr. Christensen, linguist. If you're here with us still.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. We have 2 questions for you, actually. Where is more research needed about stillbirth?
Thank you for that question. There are a lot of things that we know, and of course, much that remains to be learned. I think that one of the best things that we can do is look to our peers in other high-income countries. As I mentioned, they're doing really great work and are implementing programs to reduce stillbirth rates. And I think what we need to do is bring them over here and get them going so that we can start saving lives now. There's also much that we know about the placenta and much that we don't. There's evidence that suggests that babies who are pretty large relative to the size of their placentas may be at a particularly higher risk for stillbirth. And so I would love to see additional research in that area as well.
Thank you. Your second question is, what additional data should states or the CDC be collecting so we better understand stillbirth?
Marjorie, I only heard the first part of the question, which was what additional data, but I think I know where you're going. What we talked about data quality.
The end, can you hear me? Hello? You all can hear me, right? Okay, I think we lost Dr. Christensen, the linguist. I'm going to.
You want me to answer that question a little bit?
Sure. Thank you for stepping in.
Sure. So we need. I don't know if Lauren's back or not.
I am back. I got.
Oh, she's back. Then I'll pass the baton back to you, Lauren.
Okay. Hopefully the internet will continue working here. I think we just need to do a better job of collecting the information that we already are. The fetal death certificate has a wealth of information on it. We could really, be able to complete that section on the cause of stillbirth, which the Shine for Autumn Act will allow us to do by getting access to more perinatal pathologists. I really feel like that's what we need to do, is to just be able to get complete and accurate data on the variables that we're already trying to collect.
Can I add one thing in addition? So the American College of OBGYN, as well as other colleges around the world, have delineated or elucidated various kind of laboratory evaluation protocols or practice guidelines on the types of analysis or tests that should be ordered at the time that a stillbirth occurs, which gives you a window into why the stillbirth has occurred. So we know that there's not one kind of universal reason why stillbirths occur. So I think we also have to spend effort on, if we're going to be doing the testing at the time of the event, then I think we have to be collating that data through the fetal death certificate. And I think we need to improve that collection and collation and analytic process.
Thank you. Thank you both for responding and sharing your wisdom. We have one more question for our panelists. We do have some questions from the people here with us today. What can be done to better support patient awareness and information about stillbirth? And that could be for anyone.
I'll take that up. I mean, as an obstetrician in maternal fetal medicine, I see a mix of different types of patients. So I see patients who are at increased risk, and the way you address that conversation is probably different than the way you address it with a patient who's not at increased risk. It's actually a little bit of a difficult conversation, right? When people are having a kind of fun, joyous, happy pregnancy, it's actually not a simple thing to introduce kind of sad and potentially upsetting topics into that conversation. It's important and it needs to be done. And maybe we need to train our clinicians a little bit better in how to introduce that topic. But it's actually kind of a difficult conversation when you start bringing up potentially sad things as to bad things that could happen during pregnancy. Obviously, you want to frame it in the context of a positive way to try and prevent issues. Same as when you send your teenage driver out into the streets and you talk to them about not, doing kind of things in the car that would make them potentially lead to an adverse event driving. So how you have the conversation, how you frame the conversation is obviously important.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I add in one piece?
Sure, Neka.
It's not only up to the medical establishment. Remember, there are doulas, there are maternal health advocates, there are patient advocates, there are programs that are out in providing information, and we all need to work together under one umbrella. It's not just one initiative that's going to change this. Because think about it this way. Doctors are only able to spend maybe 15, 20 minutes with a person. However, a doula is able to go in and stay with the client until the client says, okay, I'm fine. I have all of the information, and so on and so forth. So it would make more sense for there to be a community-driven model that's supported by the medical team in order, and that's the only way we're going to reach the at-risk population.
Agree 100%.
Yeah, I love that, Nneka. You're right. It needs to be a community. We have so many questions in the Q&A, and I know that we're crunched for time, so I want to get to a few of them, like maybe 3 or 4 before we end our session. And this will go to Dr. Westover or Dr. Christensen, linguist. Is there a certain number? Oh, no, I'm sorry. This will go to Emily. Is there a certain number of kicks that is considered normal for a baby that is in utero? Or should expectant mothers simply be paying attention to changes in the frequency of their baby's kicks?
Thank you so much, Marjorie. I'm Emily Price. I'm the Executive Director of Healthy Birthday, Inc., the 501c3 nonprofit organization that created the Count the Kicks public health campaign. And the answer to that question, and Dr. Westover, certainly feel free to chime in as well. We do not provide medical advice, but what we do say is Count the Kicks is an empowering way to be able to talk to stillbirth in a way to help prevent stillbirth. And so every baby is different. Every baby is going to move differently, and that's what is key. And so moms across this country need to know what is normal amount of movement for their baby, and then speak up if they notice a change. And the evidence-based method that Count the Kicks teaches expectant parents across the country is to time how long it takes your baby to get to 10 movements during each kick counting session each day in the 3rd trimester. So starting at 28 weeks or 26 weeks if you're high risk, time how long it takes your baby to get to 10 movements each day in the 3rd trimester. Pretty soon you're going to start to notice a pattern. That's what's pretty cool about babies, is every baby is going to show you what their normal is. So for instance, my baby might take 4 minutes to get to 10 movements each day, and Marjorie, your baby might take 25 minutes to get to 10 movements each day. I need to know that 4 minutes is normal for my baby, and you need to know that 25 minutes is normal for your baby. Because if all of a sudden my 4-minute baby takes 3 hours to get to 10 movements, I need to call my provider and let my provider investigate, perform a biophysical profile, an ultrasound, investigate and see what in fact is happening. And the app, our free app that's available in stores, Count the Kicks, is a great way to monitor because you're going to see your baby's trend line. And then if all of a sudden your baby's normal starts to change, you're going to see that graph go up. These are the brochures that are all across the country and the empowering way to have the conversation about stillbirth with moms, to let them know this is a great way and a non-invasive way to monitor your baby's health in the 3rd trimester. Thank you for the question. And
thank you for that very important information. I know this is really helpful for expectant mothers, as they're coming along in this journey. We do have one more question, and it's going to go to Debbie. In the essence of time, this will be our last question, and we will answer the other questions in written form. So Debbie, we're so excited. How can we help get this bill passed?
So what we need to do is have House members support this bill on the floor later today. And then in the Senate, we want the senators to express their support for this bill. And so, talking to your Senate leadership about the importance of a bill like this and what it means for the future of our country will help us to get over the finish line.
Thank you so very much. We're so excited. We're believing positive things for today. It will go through. It will go through. So we are nearing the end of time, and we want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. You will receive a post-event email from us with a link to the recording of the event, as well as more information about the SHINE Act. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us today.